Okay, so we're gonna see if we can't go through a couple of the base design in Stronghold Kingdoms, and keep in mind that none of these tips and tricks are definitive. There's always different ways of doing it. There's always better, but they should be able to offer some sort of insight that on average will make your castles function fairly well. Um, Generally, I want to recommend that you start with building guardhouses first. It might seem a little bit counterintuitive, especially if you're starting a new world and you're, being hit by AI. If you do feel like it, you can always start with a small inner ring or something, but it will have to be deleted eventually. So what I would do is either measure 5 across from the corners and then place your barracks, or simply just put great towers in the corners and then start placing your barracks. The reason why I want to place the barracks first is that if you absolutely have to and you get attacked or you're in a pinch, you can pike the castle up. So as long as you have enough barracks placed, you can essentially put hundreds of pikes around the keep here, which will make it very difficult for a rogue to capture it or even, for an outright attack. Um, it's sort of like a defeatist mentality where you're always prepared for war, you're always preparing for the worst and never quite relaxing or putting your guard down. Way, you get ahead in this game. A general thing is to place your guardhouses in the corners. Guardhouses are very weak. They will immediately get destroyed by catapults. So we're going to try to put them somewhere where, they're sort of out of the way. And normally attacks are incoming in the middle. Of course, you have a lot of good corner attacks, but they're not as common. The average rogue certainly is not going to capture your castle via the corner. How you choose, however, to go about placing the guardhouses in the corners, it's entirely up to you. Um, but that is another. Place your guardhouses in the corners, not around the keep, not in the front. I see all kinds of odd placements of the guardhouses, and you're not going to get ahead if you place them randomly around the keep or whatever. In general, you want as much air around the keep as possible so that you can keep placing pikemen. Um, you need to keep in mind that a lot of intermediate will rely heavily on archers, whereas the pikemen are what's going to tip the scales of war. So I'm going to go through gradient by gradient. A very simple and fairly cheap castle design that everyone should be able to use essentially. And another thing that has changed lately is that the moat is now a lot more powerful than it used to be. So you want to try and rely on more moat in your castles essentially. When you've placed corners like this, delete the great towers again, just to ensure that these things will construct first. And then I start placing the towers back in. There's 2 different variations of the corners. You can do a great tower like this, and then a large tower next to it. Or you can do the large tower in the corner, and then put the great towers like this. The benefit of doing it this way is that you can put turrets here, which will make the corner attacks a bit more costly, but the corner is innately a little bit more weak. Some people make the argument that if you keep the large, then you can have more archers in the corner, but whether they're here or here doesn't really matter. One is that they will place their towers a couple of blips in from the white line. Maybe use smaller towers, different variations. which inevitably leads to very, very weak spots. So general rule number one, push your barracks out towards the corners. General rule number two, make sure that you use great towers more or less always, and make sure that when you place your towers, they're all the way out to the white line encompassing your castle here. You can also save the castle in various stages. So once you have the guardhouses down, um, you can store the castle in the cloud so that you can easily load it in your next town. You can do the same once you've placed the outer ring, and in that way you can load in parts of the castle continuously as you so wish. Now my general theory is that you don't need the if you just want to farm and relax and do your able to stand your ground in wartime, you don't need the best castles. You just need a castle that is better than average. Because inevitably then people will, try and target someone enough that, it's costly. So make sure you get a strong outer ring like this. And I would also advise that once you place the corners, you place the outer ring, and then you sort of build your castle from the outside inwards, always ensuring bombards and the turrets in early together with the guardhouses so that you have some defense capabilities. Once you've placed the outer ring, we can simply fill in some towers here in the corners. Place them not all the way into the barracks, but draw them one out like this. The reason for that is then we can fit a little bit of moat here on the corner of the tower. So if someone comes through the corner, the pikemen are going to get distracted by the moat. The AI is very dumb in this game, so it doesn't take much for them to stop charging in and occupy themselves with something else. Keep placing towers around the outer ring like this. And this is by no means one of the strongest castles. You can still pitch monster. It has too many great towers. It's too weak or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that if you were to build all your towns like this, you would still be ahead of the majority. There's a lot of people just tinkering away that do all kinds of weird shit, and this is going to be, well above the average. What you can actually do is we can move these two towers here. We'll move this one all the way into the barracks. Put this one like here, and then now there's going to be room. It's going to be two wide slot here, making room for turrets if you so will. And if you then in a high land, there's going to be rocks blocking here, making this path a little bit more secure. And essentially, actually do the same in the back here. We make a room for the turrets here. So you can place a line of turrets firing towards the keep. So when this is done, I want to place down a gatehouse to make sure the keep is enclosed. And then I'm going to opt for a bit longer release of the sally. Generally, don't build castles where the sally forth will charge out in the front. Don't build castles where there are different exits in all corners or whatnot. Stick to something simple. Once this is built, again you can save it. Then is put some oil pots in, smelters, sorry, and then sort of just wait for them to tick away. Once this is all built up, once the smelters are constructed, you place your oil pots, and I would then delete the smelters again, and then put the final stage of the castle in. Go to my castle designs or do a homage to Gallows God here. So you're going to see it's going to try to place more barracks here than I can actually place. The reason for that is in the castle that I copied, most likely I had bombards here and whatnot, and then, you know, I had more guardhouses than I do now. Delete those and press confirm. That is going to be a recurring issue once you start loading up old saves. It might try to place 12 ballistas when in this part tell you, you know, doesn't work, can't do it. So you just have to be a little bit mindful and keep an eye on where the actual discrepancy is. Again, this is just an example of how you can do it. The general idea here is that you will then place the oil pot on each one of these little pillars here. You have plenty of room around the keep to place pikemen. We'll use peasants as a substitute. You also place pikemen on you can even go all the way out to the entrance here, and roughly you can place around 200 pikemen in the center now, which is key because you set the pikemen to aggressive stance, and once you know you get attacked, they will charge to the breaches in the castle and fight on your behalf instead of just standing still taking damage. It's going to be able to withstand all AI attacks over time. You can place the archers on the inner towers here, on essentially the ring going around the inside, the four corner towers and the sides here. And then the AI will only damage the outer ring, and as long as you come on to repair every 2-3 days, you'll be just fine. Yeah, so this is you know, it's not a beginner's castle. It has some of the key elements, you know, it has the correct outer ring, it has the strategic placement of guardhouses, it uses moat and oil, and most importantly, it makes use of a center defense. And with all these tactics combined, you can withstand, you know, most intermediate players just fine. Of course, any attacks being timed, even a full pitch monster, etc. If you're offline, you're always going to lose a castle. It's easier to attack in this game than to defend. But there's still a lot of ground to be gained a certain way, making sure that outer ring is, you know, always consistent, making sure you utilize a lot of pike. This castle is not very expensive to make. It will cost a little bit of iron for the smelters. Each smelter is 400 iron and will allow you to place 5 oil pots. And roughly you will need maybe 60-70 oil pots. So, you know, you don't need that many smelters essentially. And I'm out of iron now, so I'll have to send some to my town. And again, once the smelters have been placed, delete them and, you know, make the inner swirl. And that's it. So to recap, you know, make sure your guardhouses are in the corner. Make sure your outer ring is consistent, is all the way to the white line. Make sure you use great towers wherever you can. You know, never use small towers, never use lookout towers, never use a lot of wall, and utilize moat and pike defense where you can.